I am so excited to have you all back for another Friday. We are very, very excited for this episode specifically. This is a big one for us. We're stoked. So another episode of the Cyber Queens podcast. And Stacy and I are sitting here with Lynn Dohm, the executive director of Women in Cybersecurity, the WiCyS organization that we all know. Lynn, welcome to the Cyber Queens. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
I think I kind of stole your thunder a bit. I gave them your title and where you work and everything, but please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell the people a little bit about you.
All right. So I'm Lynn Dohm. I'm with the Women in Cybersecurity organization. We often go by our acronym, WiCyS, and we spell that WiCyS, pronouncing it WiCyS, like we sisters, because we're a global cyber sisterhood. So our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. And I heard the WiCyS, like we sisters, at my very first conference itself in 2018 when it was here in Chicago. And I was like, that makes sense. So it makes it so much easier to remember. So I've been executive director since October of 2019, and WiCyS has really, changed my life. My first conference was in 2018. It was the first time I had this camaraderie and community and network within my own cybersecurity journey. And so it's really great pleasure to be executive director and to be able to be a part of these amazing conversations on Cyber Queens, which is a great name for a podcast. And congratulations to you both for Difference Makers of the Year award. That's super awesome. And all your hard work that you're doing within the community. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a big milestone for Cyber Queens. This conversation came about because of our fabulous volunteer, Jody Lash, who was like, hey, are we interested in partnering with WiCyS and doing a little cross collaboration, a little cross promotion? I was like 1,000% absolutely. Please make that happen. Can you make that happen? And we all sat down on a planning call and this came about. And gosh, just hearing Lynn talk on that first call about the mission and how they execute on it and the values, I was starstruck. I was like, I'm so in love right now with everything you're saying. This is perfect. So one of the first things we love to have guests do is tell everybody their origin story. So I know you work in more of a nonprofit position within kind of the cyber industry, but did you have a cyber position or how did you get started with WiCyS? I have to reprogram my brain because I was a WiCyS. We discussed this. She's like, is it WiCyS? WiCyS, WiCyS, WiCyS.
WiCyS, I know. We answered everything.
Started.
So you're all good. You're all good. We answered everything. Yeah. So about 16 years ago was my first introduction to cybersecurity in general. I got contracted on a grant, a cybersecurity grant here in the Chicagoland area. And I was instantly just amazed at this workforce and the work that we were doing. And so it was so mission focused and ever evolving, fast paced. Everyone that was involved in the cybersecurity workforce initiatives that were working on this grant, they were super tuned in and tapped into, just hyper focused on just, the good work that they were doing. And so that was about 16 years ago. And as a contractor, I had other contracts as well. And so I started just realigning myself with what cybersecurity workforce initiatives. It was just this niche area where I just wanted to stay. It resonated with me. It was fast-paced and, being a person that likes to change courses very often and just is very multitasking myself. It was just a very exciting area for me to focus on. So I bounced around throughout my career and I was having contracts with nonprofits, for-profits, and grants on the East Coast, on the West Coast. I started bringing up conferences into the area, but the first time I was introduced to the WiCyS organization was around 2015, 2016. When I did some support work for them. And then I was not able to even make it to any of those conferences. So I was just working behind the scenes and really enjoying what I was doing, working virtually, not meeting anyone in person, kind of similar to the story of you two. And then in 2018, finally, it worked out in my schedule that I was able to go to the Chicago conference. And it was the first time that I had that aha moment in my career where I was able to sit down and meet a community and really be surrounded by a tight network. And my career advanced very quickly from that 2018 conference here in March. And because of that, in 2019, I received a little message around August 2019 from our founder, Dr. Amberine Siraj, and she was at Tennessee Tech University at the time. And she asked me if I consider applying for the position of executive director for women in cybersecurity. And I thought, when else in my career am I going to be able to merge my passion and my career into one, and really sit in a place that resonates and is right for me? And so I went ahead and went for it and did about 3 months of hardcore interviews with board of directors, and then landed in that position October of 2019. So it's been a dream. It hasn't been easy. We have done a lot of incredible work. And, as soon as I joined as executive director, we went right into a pandemic, and then we exploded into more of an international organization. And we've been ebbing and flowing and navigating through it all and taking each moment as it comes. So it's been great.
So you didn't have any challenges when you joined. Not only is Women in Cyber challenge, then we had Women in Cyber during a pandemic, which is phenomenal.
Yes, we canceled the 2020 conference on March 5th at 3:00 in the afternoon. Like, it's etched in my brain forever, because the conference was supposed to be March 12th. So it was 1 week away. And I was like, the pandemic, that is not going to impact us in Colorado. We're all safe. That's going to stay right there in California, right there. And then all of a sudden, from 9:00 in the morning of making the decision on March 5th that we're keeping it, to 3:00 in the afternoon being like, the conference is off. We cannot do it. It's no longer sustainable. So, but, we were able to flex very easily, and we went into a virtual conference, and it was incredible. And that's where we really started gathering the momentum in our international community. And they started collaborating with many regional affiliates in the States, and just a lot of beauty came from that effort.
Yeah, I so appreciate that conferences went virtual, because 2020 was my first year as a practitioner. It was my first year as a pen tester, and I did not know what I was doing. And all the conferences I wanted to go to learn got canceled. And I was like, no. And then they all went virtual. And as a single mom with an infant and a toddler, I was like, this is better. This is great. I can learn from all these people in my living room folding laundry. Perfect. So I personally love how all you conferences and WiCyS pivoted to virtual. It meant a lot to me in my journey.
So I'm curious, Lynn, WiCyS, we see so much about it on our LinkedIn feeds every day. Like, it seems like every day there's someone celebrating, whether they, got a speaker slot at the conference, or they are part of a new training program, or they have signed up to do mentoring. There are so many things being offered. And even more so, you're talking about this international expansion. So I don't know if there's any way you can kind of sum up for us, like what the different focus areas are, and especially too how that international community can take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on with the WiCyS organization. And I know it's kind of hard to figure out, like, where do I fit in here? Because there's so many pieces of it. And everything, like with the WiCyS membership, every launch that we have, and every opportunity, every scholarship, any training program, any specific initiative, that's all included with the membership. There's never any additional fees or anything like that. And so it's always like, where is WiCyS going, and what are we doing, and all the different areas. But our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. So what we do is we provide accessibility and opportunities to cybersecurity, not only for gaining momentum and creating the community and bringing the pipeline in, but also to really sit with the individuals that are within the workforce and identify what their needs are to not only be retained and stay in the workforce, but advance in their careers because of it. And so I think maybe it would be helpful if I just kind of go over like a quick little timeline of WiCyS and how we got started. All right, so we started in 2014 as a conference, and we were a conference only. So we had very humble beginnings. We started as a $70,000 NSF grant. Our founder, Dr. Amberine Siraj at Tennessee Tech University, she was like, at that time, the statistic came out that 11% of women were in the workforce. And she was like, I'm really not seeing it in any of my circles of industry, academia, or government. And so her thought was, if women in cyber exist, let's go out and let's bring them together for a technical conference so we could all learn, grow, and advance together. And so NSF awarded her the money, and she hosted the first conference. So we started as a conference. And because the needle was moving very slowly, even though the conference was growing quickly, the needle was moving slowly for women in the workforce. In 2018, another study came out that said, hey, women are still represented at only 11% of the workforce. And it was that time that we decided to become a nonprofit. And so now we're a member-based organization. We have over 9,000 members, representation in 95 countries. We have 68 professional affiliates all throughout the continent of Africa and countries like Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, Ireland, UK, Germany, and all throughout the United States. We have specialty affiliates, and they're extensions of us as a global organization, and they're in AI, critical infrastructure, cloud security, data privacy, and cybersecurity law. We have LGBTQ plus pride, neurodiversity, Latinas in cyber, colors of inclusion, deaf community. Our deaf affiliate launched last year. We're super proud of that. So we have a lot of different areas and community efforts for women to gather, connect, and learn and grow in that collective space. And then on top of that, we have 260 student chapters. So that's just our community. We have all sorts of different initiatives, and I think we're going to be touching base on some of those initiatives later. So the conference is where we started. It's still a really important part of our organization, but it's one of many, many different initiatives now.
And that was in what year you said the inaugural conference?
2014.
2014. Okay, so here we are 10 years later. It's 10-year anniversary this year. I'm just curious if you have these off the top of your head. If not, it's cool. Do you know how many attendees you had coming to the conference at first, and how many about you've grown to expect on an annual basis about today?
Oh yeah. So we had 350 in 2014, 550 in 2015. Yes.
Wow.
And then it grew to 900, 1,000. And then we had a little bit of a pandemic in there. So we went to virtual.
Right.
And then we went back in person with masks on, and then vaccine mandatory. And so this year our capacity is going to be at 2,200 attendees. So last year, when we opened up registration for the 2023 conference, we reached full capacity in less than a half hour.
Yeah.
So this year, we're also going to be hosting a virtual conference in collaboration with the in-person event, in order to have that growth strategy in place, because we booked our venue 5 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a very long time since we booked that venue, because we knew it was their 10-year anniversary. We're a Tennessee-based nonprofit. We're founded at Tennessee Tech University. Then we rolled off into our own nonprofit. So our first conference was in Nashville. We want to head back on to Nashville for our 10-year anniversary. And so we only have so much space for this year. And then the virtual piece is also going to allow for us to continue that room and growth and expansion there.
I'm so excited. That's phenomenal growth. We hope to experience similar growth. We'll see as an enterprise. Just want to, yeah, hopefully. Want to warn you all out there. Stacy and I will be competing with you on Monday, February 19th, right at, what is it, 9 a.m. Pacific?
I think it's 9 o'clock. I'd have to double check the
okay. I'll have to check my calendar invite. I have it on my calendar. I'm not doing anything that hour, but trying to get tickets to this event, because it is the new ShmooCon. Okay, it sells out. It is a habitually sold out event. So if you hope to be there and you hope to see us there, we'll be there. Make sure you're logged in that morning and you're getting a ticket early. So
yeah, that's awesome.
I also want to repeat the number that was stated. I believe it was 2,200. So anyone who is like, where are all the women in cybersecurity? I mean, the fact that you can gather 2,200 of them and it sells out in, literally minutes, like, they clearly exist. We are clearly out there. It's not that difficult to figure out where we are.
I was saying, I didn't know there were 2,200 of us. I'm like, there's that many? I'm so excited. I've never gotten to go to a WiCyS conference. I just learned about it. Like, I've only been in cyber for 4 years. My first year, it was canceled. The second year, I learned about it. Last year, I couldn't go. So this year, I'm going and I'm excited. But I was like, that's how Cyber Queens got started too. We were just asking each other in a LinkedIn post, where are the women? Like, where are we? Can we all be friends? Like, are all 5 of us friends already? And that's how Cyber Queens was birthed too. So it's very similar story.
Yeah, so I want to kind of touch on this is kind of cool, because we're sort of leaning into this topic that's on my mind around inclusion, right? And WiCyS has an incredible study that you all work on. I think there's been at least 1 or 2, and I know you're working on additional ones, just around the state of inclusion. The statistics you all uncover, and the story, not even more than the numbers, the stories that are talked about in those reports of situations that are happening today in 2024 for women in cybersecurity. This, overall, sometimes it can feel like in organizations, if you talk to someone about it, they're like, oh, we're beyond that, like we're not down at that level, like these things aren't happening anymore, like. But then you read a study like that, and it just is eye-opening. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more, if you could share a little bit more about that study, that process, what inspired it, and what you're hoping to do with it, change you might be able to influence.
Right. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because the stories are so powerful. If we all have our own stories and they continue to happen, and they're so systemic and they're so part of our day-to-day lives, and they continue to happen, that people don't believe it. Like, oh yeah, that's in the past. But it's not.
Not.
Like some of the stories from one of our senior leaders within the organization, a senior professional, she shared recently as the only female panelist that every time she spoke, the moderator kept on looking at his watch. But every time everyone else was speaking, he was like engaged and really just, listening wholeheartedly. But every time, I mean, these experiences happen over and over again. Another story that one of my a WiCyS member, that when I was at Black Hat, we went out to breakfast together, and she shared that when she was first started in her career just about 3 years ago, that her senior manager put her headshot on a leadership slide deck and labeled it diversity hire, like labeled it diversity hire. And she saw that slide deck. The stories go on and on. And in that report, we have many, stories to share, as I'm sure you all do within your community, that we're with that, just talking amongst ourselves. We all have those stories. But that's what led us to look at what is the state of inclusion. We know that diversity, we know that ISC2 and other organizations, they do a great job in studying what is the diversity in cybersecurity workforce. But we wanted to really look at, if we're seeking out retention and advancement, what is that state of inclusion? And diversity sometimes turns into a feel-good metric. So we all know that. We all know that it's a data point and it's a metric you can measure. So sometimes, in some instances, organizations or companies, they could measure that metric. And when they have that number, they could put in some initiatives and they see that number grow. Then they're like, oh, congratulations, pat ourselves on the back. We're really making strides in the workforce. But inclusion is a lot more complicated, because inclusion is a feeling. And it's only felt when you're excluded, which makes it hard. And so it was really hard for us as an organization to bring awareness to leaders on the state of inclusion, when we also know that the higher that leaders rise, there are less experiences of exclusion actually occur. So why would we think that they would have an understanding on the state of inclusion when their experiences of exclusion have lessened and lessened throughout the years? And so we really wanted to quantify the experiences of exclusion to identify the state of inclusion for women in cybersecurity, and so that we could get data and we could open up the conversation. So we pioneered that study. We partnered with Illyria. It was fabulous. It was a great experience. We opened up the study again at the end of last year. Our new findings have not come out yet, but we're super excited when they do. I'll just have to follow up with you all with an extra report. But it was an opportunity for us to just really look at the data. And, some of it, there was no surprises. Like 68% of women identified that their experiences of exclusion came from their leaders in the organization. 61% is from their managers, 57% is from peers, and I think it's 12% from policy. So it goes with the old adage that people leave their managers, not their careers. So we knew that. We weren't expecting anything other than that. But when it came to looking at the experiences of exclusion, primarily for women in cybersecurity, that a researcher, Illyria, has not seen with any other industry, is that 57% identify as the lack of career growth and opportunities as their area of exclusion within the cybersecurity. So interestingly enough, that aligns with what another finding of the report is that women experience a glass ceiling in cybersecurity around 6 years within the workforce, which is alarming. And anyone that's listening should really take a good look. If you have incredible women on your team and they're around that 5-6 year mark,
Right.
look at their career growth, advancement opportunity, and put that in place, because you don't want to lose them.
That's me. I hit my 5 years this year. 6 is next year. No, I quit. I don't want it. I don't want it. No, I think it's so interesting that you said they haven't seen that in any other industry, just ours.
And not any other industry. No,
Come on,
respect
Cyber.
is normally number one. You know, respect was there in our studies. Respect was number one. So they see that, but they've never seen that high instance, 57% of lack of career growth and opportunities for women in cybersecurity in the industry. That's what they're identifying as their sources of exclusion.
Wow.
So it's an eye-opening study. That's why we were super interested in opening it up for more individuals to participate and take a look at it, at the findings again.
And I think it's so tactful the way that you guys chose to show the absence of the thing we hope to see by emphasizing the state of how things currently are. You're like, if we're experiencing all this exclusion, it means your inclusion is lacking. And to all those out there, we said this last week, who think, oh, women are doing fine, diversity is moving forward, why do you still need women podcasts and women conferences? This is why. It is still a thing. Right. This is why. This study is fabulous. If you haven't downloaded previous years, I recommend you check it out. And apparently this year's is coming out. So definitely check it out for sure.
Yeah, I definitely just want to echo the point that you made too about how as people move up the ladder, the relatability of what's going on for the people in some of the more entry level roles, there starts to be distance. And I think we see that a lot outside of cybersecurity. When you just look at like the number of CEOs with a stay-at-home spouse, right? When you look at male CEOs, like almost all of them have a stay-at-home spouse that can, provide all of that support for that individual while they stay solely focused on their career. Whereas on the flip side, first off, there's not that many women CEOs to begin with. And then if there are women CEOs, the statistic is a little bit different. Like only a fraction of them have stay-at-home spouses. And so they're still trying to, succeed and do it all without the help of literally having someone else with that full-time dedication supporting them, right? And so it's the same thing in like cybersecurity. I think if we brought it back to our industry, as you move up in cybersecurity, the roles can get to be more demanding. And, if you have other responsibilities outside of the household and have another working spouse, it kind of sets us all up to be in a no-win situation, right? And so the solution isn't like, like we should like get people more, stay-at-home spouses or only hire the people who can have stay-at-home spouses or whatever, right? Like we need to change the system so that everyone can be involved and everybody in a household can take on their equal share of labor, and scope our jobs to be better cognizant of that, because we aren't a, single provider household anymore like it was back when. It's literally just not possible.
Right, exactly. And like with WiCyS, we exist because we're at a critical workforce shortage. And the gap has even gotten bigger. I mean, and it was in 2022, there was 3.4 million unfilled jobs. In 2023, at the end of the year, there was 3.9 million unfilled jobs. I mean, that's another statistic that we have to ourselves and other nonprofits and other organizations and other voices for the communities in cybersecurity that we all serve. We have to make sure that we're creating accessibility to cybersecurity careers and opportunities. And so the industry itself does not have time to lose. It needs to retain its talent and it needs to advance. And women are part of that equation in order to advance, because one of the barriers too is inadequate role models. And we all know that, and it's hard to be what you cannot see. And so we need women in those high level positions to just continue to create and be the trailblazers in that pathway.
Yeah, it's hard to say, when I think of like who's above me and who I can look to be a role model, it's pretty difficult to imagine myself in some of these, other people's shoes in their situations because of, the trade-offs that they decided to make. Now, whether or not I know that they were chosen or they were kind of forced to do it for the sake of advancing their career, I don't know that, but we shouldn't be in a situation where like it's going to have to come to that decision, right? It's going to have to come to a decision of having children or not having children, or having a spouse stay at home, or, forego a job because you both want to be able to continue progressing your career, or taking a lesser paying or a lower level position, and having to, stop your career advancement because the expectations that we put on CISOs these days are just, way too outsized, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there are a number of CISOs who would agree with you.
Yes.
Given that we moved right into this segment, and when Lynn and I were talking, this was something she called feel good diversity, like versus intentionable and actionable diversity. And since we've been talking about the state of inclusion, what can organizations actually do differently to help or change their culture and be intentional and actually like manifest these things that they think they're seeing with these metrics changing that aren't really real? How can we combat the feel good?
Right. And that's to pay attention. I mean, that's the number one thing, is to pay attention. And these intentional actions are here in place. And to your point, even earlier saying, wow, 2,200 women in cybersecurity exist. Yes, we're here. Like, meet the community where the community is at. It's not that hard. But allyship is empathy in action. And it requires folks to pay attention. It requires intentional actions. It requires interrupting the interrupters. And it requires all of us to just be in this connective shared space of understanding so we could learn and grow and overcome these challenges collectively. It can be done. So, and the most important thing is just do no harm. Do no harm to those that are in this space, and to be able to move forward so we could all show up as our fullest potential of ourselves, and advance in our careers, not only for ourselves, but the women we stand next to. We're a part of a community because we really feel that strong community bond. We know that we're not doing all that we're doing only for ourselves, just like you two aren't, because you wouldn't be having a podcast if it was all about yourself. You wouldn't have Hackers and Heels if it was all about yourself. You're doing it for all the women that you're standing next to, and to be able to be on this pathway together collectively in a space to have a lucrative career and a work-life balance that is absolutely, capable of having. So, paying attention.
Do you think it's on us as the women to voice when we see that inequality, when they could do things differently to help us out? Because a lot of times that looks like we're looking for preferential treatment, or we're looking for a handout or whatever. Or do you think it's on the leaders and the managers to solicit that feedback and say, are we meeting you where we say we will? Are we doing a good job with this? Like, where does the shared responsibility model on diversity fall?
Well, that's a really good question. And you're absolutely right. Like, we need to be seen, we need to be heard, but then we're pegged as aggressive. And then we need to be assertive, and but also agreeable and accommodating.
And always thankful. Always be thankful for everything we have.
Right. So those are the real big challenges right there. But allyship is for men, women, everyone to be a part of. And if it takes advocating for yourself, or interrupting the interrupters, for even other individuals in the room, even women interrupting the interrupters for unfair treatment of other individuals in that space, no matter what it might be, that's a really important thing to do. But it's very courageous, and it's not easy to do. I mean, you're really putting yourself in a vulnerable state when you show up as an ally. And that's why I think a lot of people shy away from it, because they feel like, oh, that's messy. We don't want to get involved in that. That's their problem. And so therefore they kind of shy away and they protect themselves because it's uncomfortable. And being an ally is a leadership skill set in my eyes, because it takes a lot of work. It takes practice. It takes being courageous and very brave to speak up and open up in that space. And so all of us have to continue to do the good work. of bringing these conversations to life, like you do. So thank you. But also, speaking up for ourselves, speaking up for others, and encouraging our leadership to learn more. And they can learn more by all our resources. WiCyS has how to be an ally to women in cybersecurity, inclusive mentoring, how to be an inclusive leader. When you come to the WiCyS conference, we have the Male Allyship Symposium. We have the Inclusive Leadership Luncheon. We have all those resources on our website. We make it available as often as we possibly can. So, and in our mentor-mentee program, that's like opening up another space where we want to have these conversations. One of my favorite things is when we launched our mentor-mentee program, a guy that I worked with, he became a mentor, and he said he himself going through the mentor-mentee program as a mentor, because the resources are intended to mentor the mentors so that they could then mentor the cohorts. So it's like a train the mentor program. But he said after going through that program himself and having those really uncomfortable conversations in his cohort, that a year later, he cannot believe the individual that he is. Like, he leans into these conversations so at ease because he went through the mentoring program himself, and he just has a different framework of understanding because of the experiences of his cohort. And so we're all learning and growing in this space. There's no expert. There's no, one thing and you're going to get there. We all have to continue to do it together.
Yeah, I find that unease really only comes if you're afraid of being attacked because you're about to say something that comes from an uneducated standpoint. If you're to be like, yeah, I agree, screw those people, or like, oh, you're wrong, you're just siding with the enemy or whatever, but you don't have anything to back that up. You don't have any data. You don't have any like informed opinions. You're just kind of going with things that you've heard, and then people question you. Then you feel like attacked, and then so I just think, like you said, educate yourself. Lean into the conversations, like read the research, and then you will form your own opinion and you'll have something to back it up with. But we are all learning. I'm in a group thread with quite a few people where there's two of us who are of the LGBTQ community and a few who are not. And they were like, listen, I work with this customer who really takes things like this personally. And they're one of those people who can be a little abrasive in how much they advocate for themselves and take things like offensively and stuff. And like, how can I relate to this person? Or how can I make sure I'm not, fired at when I really am trying to be on their side, but I don't want it to look disingenuine. And I was like, honestly, I would say I might make a mistake if I mispronoun, please correct me on the spot. I'd love to make on the spot corrections. I would love to learn. Please coach me, turn them into an ally rather than I'm like, but all you can do is ask questions and say, this is the place that I'm at, but the place that I want to be. And I might stumble, but help me get there. Like, none of us are going to be mad because you are trying to improve, so.
Exactly. I love that. That's great advice. That is great advice.
And my personal take is that if you are smart enough to be in cybersecurity, you are smart enough to figure out what you can do, what you should do, what you are responsible for doing when it comes to inclusion and being an ally and, making the workplace equitable and inclusive. Like, if you can figure out how to,
the cloud or Kubernetes or coding.
Exactly. If you can figure out all these kinds of things, I am confident that you have the ability within you to figure out, like, how do I recruit women onto my cybersecurity team? What sorts of policies and programs do we need to retain them? How do I set up career progression for them? And all of that before the answer being that you run to the women on your team and ask them to do it for you, right? I've been on a team before where it was like, oh, yes, we really want to support women. Stacy, like, can you go out and get the women? And it's like, there is nothing innately like powerful or within me that makes me any more or less capable of recruiting women to come onto our team than you. You all have the ability to go to google.com and type in women in cybersecurity conferences and pick out a few of them, attend them, connect with women, talk with them, and invite them to have a virtual coffee chat or something, right? Like, there is nothing about me that makes it to where only I, because I am a woman, can do this, right? And so it almost feels like, in a way, sometimes there's like this, in relationships, they talk about like that weaponized incompetence. Like, I almost feel like that's what happens sometimes with others in our, in our industry when it comes to like, oh, I want to be an ally, I do support women, but like I don't know what to do. And it's like in 2024 there's no excuse, because you just listed off with WiCyS all of these resources that will tell you exactly what to do.
Right. And it boils down to, again, the intentional actions. Meet the community where the community is at. The community exists. It's how are you going to show up within the community?
Mhm.
And that, what is your, what are you prioritizing, and how are you prioritizing that? And how are you going to move it forward?
And
So I love that though.
I love it. And I have one more point I wanted to make on this. And someone kind of asked a similar question before we move on from this topic, because I do want to talk about WiCyS's programs, because it's one of those behemoths where like your org is so big and beautiful that like some people don't know where the entry point is, how to get started, what they should start with. So I do want to get to that. But
Right.
someone asks, how can we advocate for more women in leadership roles within the cybersecurity industry? And the thing I was going to ask is, when you see companies saying we're committed to like 50% women on leadership by a certain year, and it comes down to like, we could pick one of these two people, but should we pick them because they're a woman? Do you think that's like commendable or enough? Do you think we should be doing stuff like that? And like, I mean, it achieves the goal. It gets more women in those conversations, in those rooms, at those tables. But is that how we should be approaching it?
Oh, that's a complicated question.
I know, but I can't think of anyone better to ask. So.
I know.
Okay, we'll just go back to the original is just how can we advocate for more women in leadership roles within our industry?
Well, it really comes to the career growth and advancement opportunities, is to have that clearly lined out. I mean, everyone should have professional development opportunities and should know exactly where they're going and aspiring to go within an organization. And when you're looking at and track how many individuals are getting, like, I mean, what we're seeing in our studies is that women are getting passed up time and time again for promotions, for different stretch assignments, for different new opportunities within the organization. And is that being tracked? And is that being tracked and also taken into consideration when they're looking at different and various candidates? Because what our study has pointed out is that women are experiencing that glass ceiling because of just that, because they're just kind of left stagnant. No one's really taking responsibility. They're asking questions. They don't know quite where they're going to go back into the org. Like, there's no big career growth strategy in place for them. And so take the initiative. If you value the women and the individuals on your team, just like all the individuals on your team, you should have a clear growth strategy for them. And that takes time. That's a leader. And that's a person really investing in the individuals that are reporting to them. And they're really taking a look at what is going to be the best for those people to have that fulfilling happiness and rewarding career that they deserve, and they could grow in that career and be retained. Gartner reported at the beginning of 2023 that it's estimated by 2025 50% of cybersecurity leaders are going to be stepping out of their role. So we not only have this big workforce need, this critical workforce shortage,
we have a workforce replacement shortage coming up soon.
Right. Like, retention is the utmost critical. So we have to pay attention right now. We do not have time to lose. We have to pay attention.
And the reality is that many of the things that, can benefit women and that women are seeking in their workplaces are things that can benefit everybody. Having clear career progression benefits everybody, not just women. So it's worth taking the time to define out really clear criteria of how someone is advancing and providing, an objective process versus the subjective, oh, I worked with Chad for, 7 years doing these other things. And so I'm going to take him to the 5th company that I'm going to work for now and put him in my senior leadership team, right? It's like focus on building out that clear criteria, mitigate the bias, and provide these sorts of programs and support. Even just thinking too about like flexible workplaces, right? And everything around that we're seeing about return to office. So how can a company on one hand say that they support women in the workplace, that they want to retain and advance them, and then on the other hand say, we don't care what your excuse is, you're coming in the office for 4 days a week or whatnot? Like the left hand is not talking to the right. And until these companies kind of connect all the dots here, I think we're going to continue to be at odds. But again, if you actually move forward with these things, like, you're going to have a more happy, more productive, more engaged workplace for everybody, not just the women.
Right. Exactly. And the study, the state of inclusion study, kind of points that out, is that oh gosh, what was the data? That those that participated in the study that identified as employees of WiCyS strategic partner had 36%, they reported 36% less experiences of exclusion, and they had 15% higher levels of satisfaction. And so when we looked at the data, we were like, that's really interesting, because it came out right away. And the researcher was super geeked out about it. He loved it. And he was like, Lynn, you're not going to believe this. How cool. We weren't even looking for that. It just bubbled up to the top. And so we looked into that deeper, and we realized that individuals that participated, that were a part of that were employees of WiCyS strategic partners, they were also very involved within the community. They were a part of the mentor-mentee program. They were paying it forward by, presenting at the WiCyS conference. They were doing webinar series. They were participating, putting together programming efforts for those, really bringing the community together. And that's a higher level of satisfaction. I mean, we're all going to be more satisfied in the workplace when we're working towards a good common goal for all.
It's kind
of
like Scrooge, right? He felt better when he gave back rather than keeping it all for himself.
That's right. Just like that.
All right. So it's clear that the solution, or a very, an obvious solution that the data is showing us, is that people need to get involved with WiCyS programs, right? And so
everybody does. You do, he does, she does, they do, yes. All of them.
So let's definitely get into some
the
of
programs.
These programs. Yes.
Tell us.
All right, good. Well, we already talked about the conference. We talked about the virtual conference. The virtual conference is April 18. We're going to be opening up some programming efforts. So we have the ISC2 Spring Camp that's coming up. So that's creating accessibility for those that might be considering cybersecurity. They don't know where to start. This is a really good starting point. And it's important to note that all of WiCyS, what we do is provide that wraparound, like, wholehearted services. Like, when we launch a cohort or a programming effort, we do that with a program manager. We do it with technical mentors. We do it with mentoring. We have open office hours. We provide services and extra services and support structure for our neurodiverse community. So we have all this wrapped around the services, and we track. We want to see success at the end of the program. It's not about just giving out a certification and saying, here. We know that there's challenges and bumps along the way. There's questions, and we want to create that inclusive space for everyone, not only to gain accessibility to cybersecurity, but thrive in their career because of it. So we have the ISC2 summer camp. We have the Google certificate. We're going to be launching a camp on that. We're also going to be opening up our speaker spotlight program. So that's individuals like you all, just, out there in the speaker circuit, that we provide a code for a platform that gives you accessibility to more opportunities. You really build out your speaker portfolio. You become a part of a cohort. We put together a lot of different resources and have guest speakers in that group and really build up that community. That's a year-long cohort. We have this Target Cyber Defense Challenge that's going to be opening up again. Last year, it's about malware analysis and threat intel, and it's an opportunity for those that are in their careers just to explore what would another area of their career look like. Ooh. And then the top 10 that advance to the tier, they're able to report their findings and do a half-hour report out to the Target Cyber Defense team, or the cybersecurity team. So that's really exciting. And Target came up with that whole program on their own as a way to, as professional development for their cybersecurity team. So it's like a win-win for everyone. That's just evidence of what our actual inclusion assessment just even stated, is that, bringing the team together to work outside of themselves. And then we have our mentor-mentee program. That's going to be opening up as well. So it's a great program. We develop those resources to, kind of overcome some of the sometimes uncomfortable challenges of starting a new relationship with the mentor and mentee, and kind of dive into deeper into relationship building. And so that program had 1,600 enrolled in 2023.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it.
And it was 1,600 mentors or mentees?
Both,
Nice.
because some are mentors and mentees.
Okay.
Because we match everyone in the program with someone that's just one level above them. We want their experience to be new and fresh. And so that when they're mentoring their cohort, not only do they have the resources that we provide and they could open that up to conversation within the cohort conversation, but they also have their new, fresh experience of advancing in their career and what leveraged them. Because we're always asking our community, you know, what do you want? But sometimes you don't know what you want. You don't know what you
don't
need
even know where you can go, let alone how to get there, or like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we want someone that's a level above, that's like, oh my gosh, yes, I was just in your shoes. And you know what worked for me? This is what we want, that resonate, like someone to resonate and really be a part of, you know, the active contributions it takes to, you know, move and advance in your career.
I love that.
So that's all our programming efforts so far.
I wish I could have taken advantage of the mentor program when I was a newbie, because I just kind of like went out and DM'd people and like begged people to help me. But now there was a better, more structured way to go about it. I now know. So, you know, Discord is hefty, but in all those mentorship channels, sometimes calls for mentors can get lost. So if you are needing a mentor, this program is great. The more I learn about it, the more I love it. It's structured. It's not just like, sure, like you want to mentor and you want to help mentor somebody, like go for it. Like they just kind of thrust you together and leave you to your own devices. They get training, they get formal onboarding. You as a member get to benefit not just from that, but many other things. WiCyS doesn't try to like upsell you and add on. Pretty much everything is available to the members once you're in. So cannot recommend enough. With that, we're going to move into final takeaways because we've gone a little bit over and I want to be cognizant of our time. So final takeaways, anything you want to leave the audience with, can be how they can get involved, anything on intentional diversity, or on any of the programs or appearances or events that we've discussed today. Who wants to go first?
Well, my big takeaway is just dive in. Like WiCyS, just navigating through your cybersecurity career. Are you asking me about the takeaway?
Yeah, yeah. Everyone does a final takeaway. Yes, ma'am. Do it. Do it. Lead us in.
I'm saying dive in as I'm just diving in.
Yes, dive. Do what Lynn does. Just do it. Just pull the trigger.
So when the opportunity is right there in front of you, just dive right in. I mean, my favorite stories are when we launched the security training scholarship, that it came up, a woman was a stay-at-home mom for 16 years. She didn't even hear the word cybersecurity, but she was trying to figure out what does she want to do with her life. And on her LinkedIn feed came up something about the security training scholarship where we're, you know, looking for that hidden talent. Do you have the aptitude? Do you have the grip? And she was like, I don't know. Do I have the aptitude? Do I have the grit? I don't know. Like, I don't know anything about this. Let me explore. Well, she ended up being one of the top recipients and is in her cybersecurity career because of it. So it's always like, take that, and I don't want to say risk on yourself, but just take that moment of, even if it feels uncomfortable, like dive right in. If you see something about the WiCyS organization that you want to become involved in, just go right in, because navigating through your cybersecurity education, certifications, career, it's never going to change. Cybersecurity is always changing. Like, you're always going to have to be curious. You're always going to have to navigate, and you're always going to have to step into space that sometimes at some point might feel a little uncomfortable and a little unsteady, but you will get your footing. And so here as an organization, we're here to bring that inclusive space and wrap it around you. And, you know, we're here to champion your success. And so anything that you see within the organization, on the website, in the newsletter, just join and navigate through it. And we will all find our community and place because of it.
And I agree with that, because people tell me like, wow, Meryl, like you've taken a lot of risks. Like you've jumped here and you've jumped there. And I'm like, no. They've all been calculated risks. I did all of that intelligently. Because you'll only be new at something for a short time. Chances are you'll probably get pretty familiar with it and then decent at it and then better and better at it as you go along. So every calculated risk I've taken, that's what I've done. I've been like, I'm only going to be this stupid in this today. Next week I'll be better, and next month I'll be even better than that. I literally said that in an interview. I'll tell the story sometime. My takeaway is that WiCyS is such a great org because you can truly find your tribe. I love how they break everything down into like many, many tiny groups for you. If the whole bigger, larger org seems very intimidating, if you are introverted, they have like a military wives affiliate. They have the neurodiverse specific affiliate. They have the deaf affiliate. So no matter what closed or smaller community you find more comfortable and you find yourself to be a part of, there's probably a WiCyS affiliate community where you can find people just like you and you can all learn and grow together. So my advice would be, if it seems like a mountain and you're afraid to even like DM one of us and ask us a question, start there. Start with your smaller affiliate groups and find your tribe and learn together. Stacey, take us home.
Yeah, my takeaway is really that some of these last remarks here, right? In that, with wanting to get into cybersecurity, there is just so much information, so many resources. I mean, WiCyS has really just covered all the bases in regards to different types of programs and opportunities that can help you out, right? But if you're looking for someone to walk up, take your hand, and tell you step by step exactly what you need to do to get to a certain place within cybersecurity, that's not going to happen. And that's a good thing, right? Like, that is almost like the litmus test of whether or not you can be successful in this industry, because there is, as Lynn mentioned, a certain responsibility as a cybersecurity practitioner to be a lifelong learner, to be curious, and to go out there and seek and find and search for answers, right? And so the reality is that, like, there is so much available to you, and WiCyS has so much available to you. But if you feel intimidated and you're afraid to make that first step, I think there is an opportunity for reflection there, because that's not going to be the first time you have to put yourself into a new and unknown territory and situation if you're going to work in cybersecurity. And so really lean into that and do it anyways.
Like
right?
Lynn said, just do it.
Just do it anyways.
Full circle. It's come okay. On that note, we're gonna close out on that note. Thank you everybody for your listening and for your wonderful comments and for the debates that we've sparked and the questions that you've asked. We will be addressing all of those in the comments later. Lynn, thank you so much for being here with us today. I personally learned so much about WiCyS I didn't even know before. Like, I'm constantly just learning more and more. I just popped that into the comments, so I can't wait to get involved. I'm gonna join the mentorship program when it opens up. I hope you're in my cohort. Yeah. So I don't think the best way with this guest is to, if you want to reach out or connect with her, is to DM, because Lynn is a very busy lady, but you can get involved, become a member of WiCyS, attend some of the smaller events or virtual events. You can connect with people like Stacey and I at events. We'll be there this year. So, or you can become a member, become a volunteer, and get involved. So with that, thank you for being here. We, the Cyber Queens, wish you success and on your endeavors, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.